Good evening, everybody. This is Nifty Culture. I'm Robert. We got my buddy John. And tonight, we're welcoming the team from OP Games. Welcome, Chase, and welcome, Paul.
Hey
Hey
guys.
guys,
Hey
How are you
Rob.
tonight?
Hey John.
doing great, doing great. Thanks for having us. We
Hey,
appreciate it.
guys. Yeah, thanks for being on here tonight. Thank you. I know we had a few scheduling conflicts, but
Yeah,
we're now here. I
we
love it.
made it. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
And what matters the most, though, is the OP Game platform and the drop that we have coming up on October the 12th.
That's
So
correct.
we had a lot of excitement built up from the Discord. We have a lot of people talking about this project, and they want to know a lot about it. So first, would you mind giving a quick introduction of each of you guys? Tell us a little bit about yourselves, some background, and kind of what brought you into this space.
Sure. Who want to go first? Paul?
Yeah, go ahead, Chase.
Yeah,
I'll
go
go
ahead.
next.
All right. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Chase. I'm the CEO and co-founder of OP Games. I've been in the gaming space, I'd say, for the last 11, 12 years now. Most of that experience was in China as a games marketer and publisher. But prior to that, I was in finance in Singapore, so mostly doing investment banking and stuff like that, which isn't as fun as gaming. So when I saw the opportunity to actually be involved in gaming, I took that chance and never looked back. So I did mostly browser and mobile games back in the early 2010. And one of the biggest things that I was doing was basically investing in games and publishing games into the company that I work for, and that's actually how I met Paul and my then co-founder Gabby, who were game developers at that time. So they do have a company called Altitude Games that's based off in the Philippines. With the publisher, I was looking for a developer to hopefully publish. It didn't, pan out the way we expected, but a couple years down the line, we saw the opportunity in crypto, learned that we all have the same interest in blockchain, and we're like, you know what, this is a good time for us to do something together in the crypto and blockchain space. Hence, OP Games was born. At that time, it was a different company altogether, but we can talk about that some other time in the next couple of minutes. But that's kind of like where we all started. So we started doing stuff on the NFT space back in 2017 when nobody cares about it just yet.
Yeah.
And the goal for us to actually build something that's tooling and picks and shovels, which at that time nobody really wants to use just yet. And so it's funny how like we were able to make it up until now, and then suddenly everything that we did in the past became all relevant. So yeah, so that's me, Paul.
Yeah. Thank you, Chase. So I guess to add a little bit of background on myself, I'm a game developer, as Chase mentioned. I've been making games since 2004, and when just made startups throughout most of the market cycles. And when we at Altitude Games, when we found CryptoKitties and kind of saw what kind of games we could create with NFTs and blockchain, we kind of spun out OP Games, and yeah, when we just never look back, we've gone through the crypto winter. We've just continued building on NFTs, just really believing in the technology and also in the communities that we were able to reach out to, and yeah, and so if you look at the screen right now, that's one of the games that we help build NFTs for, Battle Racers on Decentraland, and that's what we kind of want to help developers similar to us who don't know a lot about NFTs. We want to bring them over to Web3, help them realize that there's this technology being built here, there's this communities that you can connect with, and yeah, and just really it's all about us helping game developers to find the same success that other companies that we've started have found.
So before we dive into OP Games, super interesting. Chase, I just wanted to ask you, you have
Yeah.
both the game development and finance background. What are your thoughts on the merging and the intersection of those two as the space evolves?
Yeah, honestly speaking, like when we started off with gaming back in 2010, that was like the early free to play game development era. A lot of those games are mediocre at best, but earned millions and millions of dollars, including the games that I've worked on in the past. And it's very extractive, right? Wherein you basically give all your money and you get all the quote unquote fun
Mhm.
from the game. And so when we sort of like align with blockchain and crypto and the economic incentives it gives back to the players,
Mhm.
I saw that opportunity in the sense that, finance and, well, not the typical kind of finance, but finance in general and financial inclusion is going to really, I would say, revolutionize the way we play games. And I think we're seeing that now with all these play to earn games that are sort of like really popping. Axie Infinity, obviously, first in the many of future free to play to earn games that will, pop up in the future. So yeah, really excited about that. And I do see that, it has gone full circle from me being in finance and then being in games and then now being in the intersection of both. So I'm like, yeah, I think I couldn't dodge finance as much as I wanted to. So here I am back, but
Cool.
it's more fun though, because there's games involved still.
Cool. And I think Paul, you guys both said this, but just correct me if I'm wrong. OP Games, it's a platform to build on top of. So you guys are actually, and if I heard you right, you guys started this in 2017, and you guys
Yeah.
went through the bear market. I mean, in 2017, it was a very small NFT market.
That's true as well.
It was CryptoKitties, so
Mhm.
that's pretty impressive, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we did start building out early on because I guess as a company, also as an entrepreneur in the game space, you have to take a look at what's happening, right? And then in 2017, that was already a mature market, I would say. Like most of the games are distributed through app stores, but not a lot of them are making money. So I guess we were kind of lucky to see what was happening there on the NFT space. Lucky and a bit unlucky, I would say, because crypto winter also happened, as I mentioned. But we
Yeah.
stuck out. We continued building, and as you can see, like it's the OG NFT people who are finding more success now. So yeah,
Oh
so
yeah,
it's pretty good. Yeah.
oh yeah, absolutely. I think that winter was instrumental for a lot of the
Yeah.
folks that were in 2017. You had all that extra time to build. Could you
Yeah.
imagine if NFTs had launched in 2017 I mean, what a cluster that would have been. It's
Yeah.
bad enough now. But, oh, imagine.
It
I mean,
really was
Ethereum
interesting.
would have
Yeah.
died.
Yeah.
And you have to be very creative though, because even though you have
Mhm.
all the time in the world during the crypto winter, not everybody has all the resources as well.
Yeah.
And so, like in the case of myself and Paul, we're thankful enough that we were able to participate in multiple accelerators, who were able to actually okay, like here you go, join us. We'll help you out, and they've been true to their word in terms of sticking with us, helping us out a little bit in grant and funding in general. And so we did that for the last 2 years actually. And it gets a little bit frustrating seeing okay, 1 year from now and it's still not happening, right? And then right in the middle of 2020 is like where we saw a little bit of glimmer of hope and say, okay, it seems like it's picking up steam right now. And lo and behold, 2021 was a great year, or it is a great year.
I try to tell everybody that the best gains are made during the bear winters. Those you see what teams are still sticking around and what teams are still working and building, and those are the ones that fly. So good for you guys. And let's hear about OP Games, man. Let's hear about the platform.
Sure.
Sure, yeah. Maybe I can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So what we kind of saw with OP Games as we kind of build it is, and also looking at what's happening in Web3, you kind of realize that how the decentralized finance became as big as it was that people were taking these open source code or freely available and code that people can just build on top of called and the DeFi people called it money Legos. So that kind of what was able to disrupt centralized finance. And with OP Games, we're kind of taking the same thesis, wherein we think that game developers should be building, in our terms, game Legos, which are these small pieces of code that people can build on, game developers can build on, and build games on top of, and just really remix everything. So we kind of saw that, I guess, reaching a bit of a hype moment when Loot came out, the Loot project. So when the Loot project came out, a lot of game developers responded to that. They realized that, hey, these NFTs, aside from being profile pics, you can build stuff on top of them. You can build games. You can build ways to put them inside one other NFT and maybe take them out. So a lot of experimentation happened. That's what we want to do with the Arcadians, and that's our guiding, I guess, our North Star when creating them. We want game developers to use them. We're incentivizing them to use them by by doing partnerships. Some of the Arcadians, we have some games that we've collaborated with. For example, Conquest Eve. Those games that you see as you scroll down the page, some of them will be on the Arcadians. So it's kind of like we're creating. I guess we kind of are realizing that in the Web3, in the metaverse, it's not about closing people in your ecosystem, right? It's connecting with these other games. It's connecting with these other communities and PFP projects.
Could you imagine the legacy model where you've got 20 maybe fantastic game developers and they build out an ecosystem, having to compete with a global developer ecosystem, building out assets on a global game? Can you guys imagine how lopsided and how quickly that's going to shift?
Definitely. And that's kind of like one of the impetus as to why we sort of like started the company back in 2017 as well. Seeing the disparity in the market on a publisher perspective, specifically for game developers who's looking for a chance to at the very least get their games see the light of day. Like most game developers like do self-publishing, but typically that's very limiting because a lot of the things that they do is mainly focus on development and not on publishing and marketing and all the business development that comes along with it. And so a lot of times, like in my case, like I do typically play about 200 to 50 games on a yearly basis, but only at the very least about 15 of those would get published, at least in our case. Like obviously the rest would probably go for another developer or publisher and see if they could go ahead and score a publishing deal with that. But seeing that it kind of like sort of like changes the way the games are made, because publishers would only look for games that are specifically there to make money. Specifically on that free to play model. So, the creativity for most parts are somewhat being diminished because there's a formula in terms of like how the core loop of the game would look like. And so, you'd see like run of the mill, same loops over and over again, just different assets. And so that's kind of like, for me, demoralizing. And I was seeing the changes it has made in terms of like development here in Web3. It just is really, invigorating just because of the fact that it's highly experimental. There's a lot of thoughts, put into building games. It's very disruptive to say the least. And I think, that's one of the coolest things about like working on Web3 versus Web2.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of my favorite things used to be with the mods in legacy games, right? So some of the most, like Hearthstone, for example, that's community-driven mods. Amazing things can happen. So
true.
So I'm listening to all this good technical stuff here. So what we're talking about now is OP Games as a platform to where other developers will be able to build games and be able to plug into the OP game platform, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's I know that like to simplify things, like, a platform would be a good start. But in a way, what's really going to happen somewhere down the line in the future is that this becomes a completely different protocol altogether. Under the hood, Paul is building all of these picks and shovels that basically enables these games to integrate multiple SDKs and APIs that allows them to say, for example, run their own tournaments in game, like player versus player, or even NFT wagering, for example. So all of these things would be possible based on what the game Lego that Paul is discussing, and that also includes the Avatar project, the Arcadians. The code for that is open source, and that anyone who could potentially wanted to use the Arcadians could go ahead and just basically use the code, swap out the assets, and do their own NFT drop as well. So the goal for us is to just really make everything open source so that all of these game developers can pick and choose which ones works for them, and build their game on Web3. And the platform itself is the expression of what they've built, because they're going to be present there. In the same way that if they don't want to be in the platform, that's completely fine. They can still use the tooling behind it and just distribute it on their own. So it's basically extremely flexible in terms of like how we interact with game developers and our communities as well.
And just to add a little bit to that, Chase mentioned that we start as a platform, but I think like projecting out into the future, what we kind of want to be is something similar to Uniswap, where it's a protocol that anyone can use. like if you have an NFT, it's going to be usable on there, and then we're going to have like an ecosystem there that's permissionless. That's what really Web3 is all about, right?
Okay, so Paul, just so I understand, right now it's a platform. Does that mean that right now it's basically closed off, but it's like it's open in some sense? How, can you explain that a little more?
Yeah, sure. Well, it is open. Like if you want your game to be on OP Arcade, you just have to put it up on a repository that we tell people to do. But for now, like we're gonna have to, I guess, mark each of those just to make sure that that they're the games that should be seen there, right? But there's nothing there that's stopping people from putting their game on there because it's mostly just a web page. Like we're starting with HTML5 games, meaning games that are played on a browser. So as long as you're able to upload it on a web page, then that would be playable on OP Arcade. And as long as you integrate the SDKs, then you'll be able to use those high score components or any of those things that we're building and use that for your own game.
Cool, cool. Okay, so you guys actually said you had some partnerships that you already done, or kind of some testers. What tooling did they use from OP Games there in the partnerships? Like you said, the high score feature that you guys built out. Anything else you want to showcase from the platform itself?
Yeah. Well, the tournament feature is mostly the one that here in OP Arcade. But as I mentioned earlier, like we're building the game Legos for game developers. So the Arcadians is actually one demo of that. We're talking to several game developers, and we're gonna make avatar PFPs of their projects, and we're using our open source code for them to be able to do so. And once they do that, then we'll integrate their avatar PFPs into OP Arcade. Like you can log in, you can see your avatar there. And the Arcadians themselves, once you start playing with them on OP Arcade, you're gonna gain levels as you play the games that we have there. So it's so yeah, it's a lot of other I guess Legos that you can all put together, but developers have a lot of options on what they want to do.
Oh, that's awesome.
And how many? Yeah, sorry. How many current games do you guys have currently? I saw Snake and other things like that. Are those games backed with NFTs as well? Can I own a snake?
Yeah, well, for 4 of those games, you can. We worked with some of them were our early versions that you could buy on Paras, which is one of our partners, Paras.id. So if you bought the NFT there, then you could technically own a piece of that game. And our long-term plan is if you're an owner of the NFTs, then as we've seen with what's happening in Web3, like DAOs and governance voting, we kind of want to allow our players to be able to do that, given that they have these tokens that represent a bit of ownership for each of the games.
Yeah, I guess just to add to what Paul mentioned is that on the OP Arcade site, the 4 games that are there, we've worked with Paras.id, specifically with Near Protocol, but the Arcadians will eventually be minting on Ethereum. And basically what we're doing here is basically testing it out in a much smaller community to check out and see how that works out. As Paul mentioned, the DAOs will be formed around the owners of these NFTs, of these games in general. So you essentially have a snake community, for example, where all 500 owners of that snake NFT essentially has the ability to propose to vote for whatever it is that they'd want the game to look like at some point in the future. So it's, in a way, what we're trying to do here is that partnering up game developers that are very Web2 in paradigm, and bringing in over the sort of like culture that each of these NFT holders have, specifically because they're more inclined into Web3. And so you put them together, it's much faster to actually create something, because it's for a game developer to really thrive on Web3, there has to be a huge paradigm shift in terms of like how economics work, in terms of like who the stakeholders really are, and in terms of like the game loop is, right? And so, having a DAO that represents that specific game would allow that to actually happen in such a way that the game would have some sort of like a game treasury, wherein anything that the game earns goes back to the treasury, which then the DAO could potentially vote for funding for further developments for the game. And so you would see, like, imagine yourself walking into a games arcade, for example, and you see like Street Fighter, you see Time Crisis, or whatever your favorite game is, right? In typical fashion, that's normally owned by the arcade itself. But what we want to try to do here is that when you walk into the games arcade, you see multiple games, and all of those games are owned by specific communities, and they're running it as an enterprise. They're running it as a DAO, sort of like a venture DAO. And I think that's going to be something that would really change how game ownership works, not just on a playability perspective, but also on an enterprise level.
Man, that's awesome. So Arcadians is going to be your prototype to kind of vet this out, if I'm hearing you guys.
That's correct. That's correct. And we're also building a game around the Arcadians as well. So that game will eventually be available as well on the OP Games OP Arcade.
Okay. So will these guys be the DAO that you mentioned? Each NFT will represent a portion of the DAO. Is that the plan? Or controlling interest in the DAO? Yeah,
that's correct. So like there's going to be multiple types of NFTs that's going to be released within the OP Arcade and the OP Games universe in general. So the Arcadians is one of them. These are like the PFP NFTs, and then the game itself is going to be an NFT as well, in such a way, like, say for example, the Snake game that you saw a while ago. So that game, the code is uploaded into IPFS. We created a hash out of that and minted that as an NFT, and then fractionalized that into 500 Snake tokens or Snake NFTs, which was then airdropped to 500 people. And so when the DAO is ready, we're going to harken them back and call them back and say, hey, you now could go ahead and so like make decisions for this specific game, because technically you're part owner of this game. And so we're making sure that we're able to actually bring them to participate into how the game is operated on, and as well as developed.
I'm curious, for your fractionalization, did you guys use an existing platform or write your own code? Did you take the source from somebody else, or did you do your own?
No, it's for those ones we actually just used like an ERC1155, meaning each token is a percentage of the whole thing. Okay. So yeah, so it's we don't really, I don't think there needs to be like at least for the snake NFT, like it's essentially like a token, right? Like if you own one out of 500, then that's the percentage of fractionalization. Okay. So yeah, so it's pretty simple.
Cool.
So these Arcadians. So when's the drop of these Arcadians now?
So we're hoping to launch them on October 12th. So that's in 6 days. Yeah, it's exactly up there on the screen. So we're finalizing a few more things. For example, during our last AMA, there were some requests on certain parts of the Arcadians, and we do want to let the community know that we're listening, and we're helping. We're adding the parts that they want. So we're taking a bit of time to put that in. But October 12th is where we're hoping to launch the Arcadians, so that people can start buying them.
So October the 12th, mint on your website that we're having down at the screen. Mm-hmm. Now, when I get my Arcadian, I get to play that avatar in the game, correct? There's a game that I can play it with, right? And it's already ready to go?
Yeah, we already have a demo of that. Like, I can actually share it.
Want to share your screen real quick? Yeah, I would love to see that. Yeah.
So a bit of a demo here.
I'm pumped to get one now. And I get to play. There you go. Let me do that for you.
Yeah. Are you able to share? There you go.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. But so this is an early demo, as I said, and as I mentioned earlier, we want the Arcadians to be part of like this whole metaverse of NFTs. So I'll just skip for now, so you don't see the log in there. But as an example, these are some of the test NFTs. Some aren't getting the right data yet. But for example, CryptoKitty, you can use that to play the game.
In the battle royale, you can
in the
take a
battle royale,
CryptoKitty in there.
Yeah.
You can have a kitty and a CryptoKitty going at it.
In the initial iteration, it was so silly because there was like this battle racers part, which is essentially two wheels. And so it's like fighting against two Arcadians and like one CryptoKitty, and then the other one is like a ticket of like an entry ticket to some event, and it's basically given some sort of abilities. So you know, it's ridiculous looking, but basically that's the idea here, is that, you know, we wanted to be able to actually bring over you know, most of these NFTs, not just the Arcadians, but rather pretty much like, you know, if you have like your BYA Board Ape Yacht Club NFTs, or like your Battle Racers NFTs, you know,
what about our
metaverse NFTs? That's coming soon too, right? So,
all of them, yeah. So yeah, that's the goal. Is we kind of want, because we know there's a lot of these PFPs and NFTs that don't really have a lot of utility right now, right? So if we're able to put them on a game and have our partner game developers try to build stuff on top of these NFTs, then there's value for everyone, I feel. So yeah, so as I mentioned, we put a CryptoKitty there, one of our partners as well, the Moonshot bot, and then this one, the Arcadians. So this is very raw. just as a heads up, like we're still developing it, but we're making like an auto chess game, or an auto battler. If you guys are familiar with the genre, where essentially they're put in a chessboard, and then they
fight.
It depends on their stats, like how
CryptoKitty's not doing well.
I was going to say,
it's doing really
well. Well, I mean, the elephant in the room, right? I mean, like, can you imagine all these various communities are coming in with their PFP, whatever their favorite particular one is, the Bored Apes, the punks, whoever it is coming in. And it's going to be a nightmare for whoever has to balance this battle. I mean, they're all going to give each other like 100 stats.
Yeah. So that's the thing, though. Like, we were thinking, okay, like, do we embed the stats into the metadata itself? Because that's also possible, right? But balance is really going to be an issue. So we're thinking of like other ways as to how we can potentially fix the game, or at the very least make it as balanced as possible. So it could either be random skills that would be assigned to you in the beginning, or you could choose from multiple skill sets that will be sort of like presented to you, and that will be distributed to you know, the avatars that you are going to play. So yeah, you know, like there's plenty of things that we're still working on right now. So just, you know, it's going to be crazy in the very beginning. I think like the balance is going to be crazy off. But you know, that's where the fun is. I think like the community would also have an act in playing that, and like, you know, at the same time giving us more feedback in terms of like how we can actually refine this whole thing, so that not only is it balanced, but also like visually appealing once the game is really done.
I've got an idea you guys can use that would make a lot of people angry, but it'd be pretty funny. If you guys ever been to a piano bar, like whoever tips the most is the song that gets played. You guys can make like little jars, and the communities have to tip you guys, and they get the highest stats, right? You can like every day see the tips rising, right? So the more engaged the community, the more they tip, the stronger.
I'm sure they would love that.
It's such a degen game. But we're also hoping, of course, some players want the balance, right? So what we're gonna still figure out is like game designers can go in and kind of define, and maybe the people can vote also on which stats are important. And we're kind of gonna be deliberately, I guess, at least using the Arcadians first. So those ones will be like, there'll be a definite stat for each of them, so it's balanced, and then we're probably just balance as we go along. I think this is a really great experiment, but the goal really is for everyone to be able to use their NFTs and build games on top of them. So the auto chess version is just the first one. We have other genres as well that are being developed, like an idle game, and yeah, we're talking with a lot of developers to see how we can integrate their NFTs and as I said, the Arcadians in their games.
So what is
the Arcadian?
Oh, Rob, go ahead. I'm curious what the Arcadians drop look like. It's how many you guys drop, and how many unique Arcadians are there?
Oh, yeah. Oops, sorry.
I got it.
Yeah. So we're doing 10,000 avatars. Yeah, and if you look at the Arcadians there, it's divided into several parts. Like the background is two parts. Some of the backgrounds are more, I guess, have different colors. They're more rare. The parts themselves, like each Arcadian can have a left and right arm weapon. The face has two parts, the eyes and the mouth, and then the hair as well, then the top and the bottom. And if you see that there's a cat there on one of the Arcadians, like some of them can have rare pets. So those pets are mostly our partner developers. Like that cat is the Triska cat from JE's 13K, which is a community of game developers on the that are building games that are only 13 kilobytes in size. So we're doing a lot of those collaborations. We're announcing more over the next few days.
Yeah.
But we're really all about open source. We're really all about helping game developers. So those announcements will be all about that, and we're really excited about those.
So this Arcadian asset that I can get. So when I get it and I mint it on October the 12th, I get the Arcadian, and I can play that Battle Chess Royale first. Correct?
Yeah.
I can play that game that you just demoed,
Mhm.
and then I'll be able to take that asset to other games as well.
Yeah, that's the goal. It's if you have an Arcadian, you're not just gonna play the Avatar Battler. You can go to OP Arcade. Some of our games will allow you to use your Arcadian, and a few other things we're working on is we're also creating a comic around the Arcadian. And some of our plans is that the comic, if you log in with your Arcadian, then the comic will have your Arcadian up there. So a lot of experimental things. As I said, these Arcadians are just Legos that you can put everywhere.
So you get to own, it's like you're owning the IP of your player, of your game, and you get to bring that IP and that asset anywhere you want. So it's like owning like the character of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think that's what the profile pic avatars have shown, right? Like Word Date, if you own that, then you can use it anywhere. You have the IP. And what if we expand that to games? Like this is your character, you can bring it anywhere.
Yeah. And that's kind of like where our conversation is going around as well within the OP Arcade itself. So at some point in the future, some of those games would be able to actually accept Arcadians and make it playable in that specific game. But the OP Arcade itself is another thing altogether. It's an entire meta game wherein your Arcadian is essentially going to be your avatar for the platform. And having an Arcadian means that you would likely have access to content that's not available for other people, like extra gated content, for example, some secret deathmatch sort of like layer that only people with Arcadians can access. So these things in general, would make the platform more, I'd say, gamified in such a way that not only are you playing, but you're also playing as an Arcadian, and that allows you to sort of like have more benefits within the OP Games ecosystem. So yeah, there's plenty of things that we're planning to do on the Arcadian side of things. So we're really excited to continuously build on this one and see what experiments works.
And this is the first asset that you guys are dropping. So this is the original inaugural mint.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. That's super important. I think we grab some of these. I think everyone should grab some of these.
Yeah.
Then you can get into all the future roadmaps for you guys. I mean, looking at the games now, I can just imagine how they'll be 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, like 5 years from now, the games are going to be so much better than what we have now. Like now, it's just basically like like the earliest prototypes of like what games could possibly be, right? Like I think like 5 years from now, like it's going to be really, really sophisticated. That level of interoperability is just going to be mind blowing. So I'm really bullish about that. I mean, I've been talking about interoperability back in 2017 or 2018 when nobody cares about interoperability, much less NFTs. And I'm just really so happy that we're seeing that now. And I think that's kind of like a culmination of like these common thesis that most of us nerds back in 2017, 2018 building NFT stuff is actually seeing now. So like it's really, really exciting, and hopefully a lot of people see this and get to join us in the community, because like the cost for the Arcadians in general, all of them, it's going to go back to our game developer partners, to the gaming communities that we are supporting. So in essence, like once we raise the funds for the Arcadians, all of that is going to programs that are meant to cultivate and bring over more Web 2 game developers into the Web 3 space.
This is all making sense to me now. It's all making sense now.
I'm glad it is. I'm glad it is.
Yes. Now I'm getting even more excited because not only do I see and being able to own like a player of the game, being part of that future roadmap, I think getting in now and supporting you guys and getting the Arcadian and having one of those assets will be on the long ride with you guys as it just continues to get better. And the Arcadians to me bring back a nostalgic feel as well. I mean, we were all playing Sega Genesis. We're all playing those cool games like that. This is exactly like it, man. It feels like I'm owning part of the nostalgic of my childhood.
Yeah, and do stay tuned for the lore and the comic as well, because like that's kind of like where we're all going to explain exactly the origins of the Arcadians, how it came about, how we see this as a sort of a complementary, because it's very very retro in such a way, right? There's a very vaporware kind of like feeling into it, but how they got involved into the crypto and the blockchain space is something that we'll be explaining on the lore side of things, so we're really excited about that as well. But what we're more excited about as well would be to anybody who's supporting the Arcadians, to everybody who is basically going to get involved in minting one of these Arcadians. Your support means that you're also going to be supporting most of these game developers that's on our radar, because we're also going to be creating an accelerator program. Am I supposed to talk about that, Paul? Am I allowed?
Yeah, I think you can.
So we're I think 33% of the proceeds of the Arcadians will go to an accelerator program meant for Web 2 game developers to actually go into Web 3. Another 33% of that would go to our partner game developers for grants. And the other 33% of that would go to open source game engines, so that we can easily enable these game engines who's supporting Web 2 games to eventually support Web 3 games as well. Because in a sense, we've created the SDKs and the game Lego, so to speak, for these games to monetize. But these open source game engines are the ones they're using to create the games themselves. And so by supporting the game engines itself, we're basically bringing in Web3 closer to the people that are still trying to discover exactly the benefits of it.
That's cool, man. You gotta give it back to the community on that. Go ahead, John.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question. Just for us non-game developers, I consider myself an avid game player, but I'm not a game developer by any stretch of the imagination. How are you guys actually leveraging? I know this is a really high-level question, but how are you guys leveraging the blockchain for this game? I understand you guys are minting NFTs, which gives folks ownership of the asset itself. But is there anything other leverage of the blockchain? I mean, are we going to be paying transactions on mainnet to play the game, or what does that look like?
I'll leave that to you, Paul.
Sure, yeah. Well, that's something we've been also thinking about deeply. We know that there's always a lot of gas costs when you're interacting with NFTs on mainnet. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bridge them to a layer 2. We're still figuring out which one. There's still a lot of things happening around layer 2s now. You can use Polygon, which is I think one of the best ones that we might be looking at. PSC is there as well, and all of these new ones like Solana and all of the other ones. But yeah, aside from just buying these as PFPs, the gameplay will be on chain for some of them, on chain on the layer 2. Because I think that's how you kind of create games that you won't be able to find in Web 2, right? You have to be able to use these NFTs really as a game design mechanic. So if for example, some of the things that we're thinking of is if you want to be able to merge two Arcadians together and make a new Arcadian of higher value, that has to be done on a layer 2. If you allow them to level up or allow your combat your combat stats to affect each other, and level up the characters as they go along, then that has to be on a layer 2. So yeah, we're gonna put a lot of gameplay on layer 2s. We're gonna think of mechanics as well that make sense on the blockchain for them. Like maybe if you stake an Arcadian, something will happen. If you merge them, right, and if new Arcadians are coming out, then I think it just really makes sense to just do it on a chain where the gas costs aren't so high.
So like just for right now, when you buy your Arcadian and then the battle royale is launching, you're not gonna be paying transactional costs to do the battle royale as it is right now. Okay.
Definitely, yeah. Not in mainnet for sure, right? Like where every transaction costs you like how much?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
And also like just to add to that, the Arcadians are well they'll be part of the OP Games metaverse, but we also want to open OP Arcade to other people. So it's a and even if you don't have an Arcadian, people can play. But if you do have an Arcadian and OP Arcade, then there's going to be a lot more things that you can do, and there's you can build value around them. So yeah, it's really a lot of we're putting a lot of thought into how the Arcadians will, I guess, become a very valuable NFT as we go along, and really just thinking of how it plays, how what's its place in like the greater metaverses, and in how we're kind of building the story of OP games.
Is there going to be a token around OP Games, like the platform itself? Will it have a token, or is Arcadians kind of like a pseudo, even though it's specific to that particular game?
I guess. There will be. That's the short answer, and I think the cat will be out of the bag anyway tomorrow. We've just recently completed our funding round. I guess you heard it first here. Yeah. Leaking information again, right? But yeah, so we've recently completed our funding round from some of our investors. But at the same time, like the cool thing about like what we're trying to do with Arcadians is that because we've completed the funding round, we want to make sure that the community and the development community is also really taken care of by making sure that everything that the Arcadians sort of like raises goes back to our partners. But yes, there will be a token. I think that's going to be a really great enabler for incentives in general within the ecosystem, because if you come to really look into like how the play to earn aspect of this all comes in, it all goes back to incentives, right? And the goal in essence is that to have all of the games or most of the games that are playable in OP Arcade, whether that's a snake game or that's a platform game or like a jumping game or whatever the game is, or a fighting game, for example, that there will be a play to earn mechanics that would enable players to actually hop from one game to another and still are able to sort of like earn from playing. In a way, what we really want to try to avoid here is that to avoid a very monolithic structure where there's only one type of gameplay as to how you can play to earn. And so by enabling game developers to create multiple types of play to earn experiences, the players will be given a lot of choices in terms of like what kind of game will they want to sink their time in for potentially getting their rewards back. And I think that's a really cool structure that would allow you to not experience playing as work, and also like not feel fatigue, which typically would happen in my case when I was doing like game publishing. Most players would grind all the time, and then there comes in a player fatigue of sort, just because they've been doing the grinding the same way over and over again. So that's kind of the goal of the platform too, is that enable all of these game developer partners that we have to really come up with a sound play to earn mechanics into their games that ties into the ecosystem of OP Games itself, which is an entirely new meta game as well that they can play to earn from the platform as well. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, there will be a token, and we will be making an announcement tomorrow on our most recent funding round.
Man, we could spend the next hour talking about token mechanics and how to properly align incentives.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that, but so I'll read it tomorrow. But I will say this: when you introduce these mechanics into the games, it elevates the level of scrutiny and security that are needed in the games, and it's something that's really interesting for me to watch play to earn developers in Web3 grapple with. There's a lot of game theory that goes into, okay, how many attack vectors are there, because you're no longer just messing with, gold and Diablo. Now you're messing with something that has real tangible value. It's the kind of stuff to keep you up at night, right?
It is.
And you're completely right about that. Like, I mean, like, these are one of those problems that we face as a game publisher and game developer back in the days, where your prize is bragging rights, but people still try to try to rig the entire system, try to cheat, such so to speak. And so what if it's like, you know, a financial incentive? The more they're incentivized to actually do that. So that's actually an issue that, you know, we're not taking lightly at all, and something that Paul and the rest of the security team is actually, you know, building some sort of like mechanism to make sure that these attack vectors doesn't happen. You know, we could go all day in terms of like how we could potentially mitigate this. But you're right. This is definitely something that developers plus us, tooling providers, would have to be very mindful of, because that will definitely happen.
All right, much cheerier subject. The art for the drop. You guys, were these by hand, or you know, did you guys have an art team come in to do these, or, you know, because you have was it 10,000 of them? So
Yeah,
that's a lot of different. A lot of different characters.
Yeah, it is. Well, like we have our lead artist Jericho kind of really define the look of the Arcadians, but we did work with some other artists, like third-party artists in the Philippines, to kind of really just make all of those other parts. So yeah, but 10,000 though, like it might seem a lot, but you can be smart about it as well. Like if you look at some of the avatars, for example, like if you are able to make certain parts, like palette swap, for example, like just change the color a certain way, right? We are using some of those mechanics, but even then, it was a little bit of work, just making each of those parts. So
Yeah.
yeah, all of them are hand drawn, but some are generative.
Is this a blind drop? In other words, you don't know what you're getting when you mint it. It could be, you know, it could be the cool warrior down on the left, or it could be like a blob, a slime blob, or something like that. Whatever's not shown yet. I mean, we're not going to have any idea what it mints, right?
Yeah, for now that's the model. Like we'll put out a rarity tier also on the site, leader to the launch. But like each part of the Arcadian will have a percentage associated with it, and we'll show that there. But yeah, similar to most avatar launches, when you get them, there's gonna be like you won't know what's in there yet, and there's gonna be a reveal afterwards.
So cool.
But have all the artworks actually already been revealed? I mean, I know there's a random element. You don't know which one you're getting when it mints, but have all the artwork been revealed, so you can kind of pick and dream about which one you're not going to get?
No, not yet.
No, not yet, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're adding a few more parts. Some of them also will actually be like unique ones. Like if you've seen some of our collaborations with some of our partner developers, some of them look really unique. So those will be the very mythic or legendary ones that you will be sure that has a very high rarity value. But really we're finalizing all of that. We're still adding a few more parts. So when we have those, we'll put them out in the sneak peeks in our Discord.
Yeah, nice. And some of the Arcadians would drop with like a cat with it. You know, not everybody would get a cat. So you know, the moment you see a cat right next to your Arcadian, I guess, you know, that's great already. At the very least, for me, that's what I wanted to get. But you're right. You know, we you know, the only good thing about, you know, what you mentioned is that there's no blob of sort within the Arcadian, so no one's gonna get a blob. Everyone's like,
John wanted a blob.
Maybe we could add a pet blob if that's really what you wanted, John.
I'm curious for y'all's collab artwork. Did you guys give people the opportunity to kind of like say, hey, we want to collab, or was it did you guys, you know, the team actually reach out to certain people? I'm just curious, guys. I think it would be really cool to reach out to like the Bored Ape Yacht Club and say, hey, if you'd like to do a collab, we could put a Bored Ape Arcadian in there to, you know, just different communities bring a part of that. Was it more of a closed process?
Yeah, well, some of them actually reached out to us from the community. We follow a few avatar projects as well, and I guess you kind of discover each other, right, as you're in this space. So some of them we collaborated like that. Some of them are partner game developers like Conquest Eve, Triska the cat, and a few more like the Battle Racers characters are also on there. So it's pretty open. Like we kind of see that eventually there's the DAO or the community themselves will kind of start deciding what kind of characters they want to see. So yeah, so it's an evolving process, I would say.
Will you guys ever have more than the 10,000 that you're minting now, Arcadians, or is this it forever for Arcadians? I know other PFPs can come in, but will this first 10,000 batch? That's it.
Yeah, for this batch, that's it. I think I mentioned in some of the AMAs also, we're kind of exploring a way to make them generative. So for example, one of your Arcadian, and if you put together with another one, then another one will be created. But we're very mindful of that we don't want the value of the Arcadians to go down, right? Because if you add more supply, then that's going to be something that would might affect the current value of each of them. So for now, we've only planned for these 10,000, but we are seeing how we can really grow how valuable they are by adding in the games. If we need to add more so that we grow the community, then we're going to consider that.
One cool mechanic that might work for you guys, and just spitballing here, is on the free market, these things are going to be available to buy, and these other communities, if they want to join the Arcadians, they can go out and buy a few of the floors and then burn them and have you guys or have them a little vault for you guys to drop them in there and morph them to, if it's the Bored Apes, for example, you could have a Bored Ape guy come in, but they got to pick up the floor, and that raises the whole floor up. Right?
That's a really great idea. That's really cool. I mean, inputs like this, like ideas like this, are basically what's going to fuel the sort of movement of the entire Arcadians ecosystem in a way. And I think one cool thing about what Paul and the rest of the team is doing is they're completely receptive to all of this feedback, because, as I've said, the way Web 2 works in terms of game development is completely different, and it just feels liberating to be more radical in terms of your design process, the way you actually create the gameplay, the way you actually create the loop of the game in itself. And so we think that community feedback is very important. Even the lore, for example, of the Arcadians, at some point we are going to open that up for the community, for them to actually decide on what really is a story about this mage right here with the cat. And so it's really a co-building process, not just a closed-off ecosystem of developers just building it for everybody else. So thoughts are more than welcome, and we'll make sure that we hear them out and consider how we could actually go ahead and accomplish that.
Nope.
I think there's so much equity here with OP Games as a platform, guys. I mean, the future is going to be huge for you. And I love being part of the Arcadians here. The drop is October the 12th. What's the mint price on these?
It's 0.055. So so not that high considering other drops. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So I feel like this is going to be like owning a piece of history, a piece of video gaming asset history right here, John. I love that.
Yeah, on a lot of these NFT projects, what folks don't understand is, and we had Tom on the show earlier. Tom Billy was on here, and he was talking about it. I think he verbalized it really well. There is a lot of long tail value in, of course, the tooling, the folks that are building the tooling, and the initial devs get a pretty good payment up front. But there's a lot of value that's driven back to the NFT holder over time, and especially with something like this. As the OP Games platform grows, it becomes more integrated. Arcadians, the original Arcadians, are going to rise naturally in value because it's the OG on the platform. So, this is the kind of stuff that investors need to consider when you're buying. You're really, you look at the concept, but then you also look at the team behind the concept. And, I'll just say it again. You guys mentioned this, but you guys have the background, you have the skill set, but more importantly, you were here during and through the bear winter, which is for me, when I look to invest, if I see somebody that was around, they continue to build during that time period, then I know, the motivations are there.
I mean, our motivations, basically are just really, creating a dent in the space, really, in terms of how we can go ahead and potentially, make this a great space, not just for ourselves, but also for the developers that we're working with, and also for the entire community. So, we're really happy to be building, and hopefully, everybody gets to support the Arcadians and the rest of the things that we're going to be building in the future as well.
This is your opportunity to own a piece of the future. Piece of the future with
That's a
you
nice
guys.
way to
Owning,
put it. Yeah.
A piece of
owning
the
that.
future, yes.
Yeah, owning a video game asset to me is super cool.
Yeah.
Super cool. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have you guys back on. We're gonna have you guys back on again towards the drop of October the 12th. We're looking forward to it. Everyone can look at. You'll see in the Twitter post. We'll be posting some Twitter posts tomorrow. You guys want to check out the website Arcadians.io. The drop date is October the 12th. Make sure you grab a piece of video game history. You can own the players. This is going to be huge, huge. So I appreciate you guys coming on tonight.
I appreciate that time as well. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you,
you
Rob
guys
and
very
John.
much. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up? Or are you guys just excited as well?
We're excited as well, right? Like closing thoughts, happy to be here. Happy to be able to talk to the community directly. If anybody of you is watching is not yet part of our Discord, please join us. We'd love to hear you, and we'd love to actually meet you there as well. We'll some of the links are here in the website as well. So we're looking forward to actually dropping the Arcadians, and like any feedback whatsoever. If you want to reach out to us, I'm on Twitter, Chase Frio. I guess that's pretty straightforward. Just send me a DM or anything. Happy to respond.
Cool.
Chase,
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Thank
Paul,
you.
thank you very much.
To say one last thing also, Rob and John, is that
Yeah, go ahead.
the Arcadians really are all about bringing game development back, the power of game development back to the creators. Like we, as game developers and game publishers, as Chase mentioned, we kind of see how Web3 and how blockchain, the creator economy, can really shake things up, and we really want Arcadians to do well and really share this success with the other game developers that we know, and that others that are going to come into the system with us.
Yeah, you're building the community around this too. I like that part of the proceeds is going to be to help bring Web 2 developers to the Web 3. That's cool.
Definitely.
Web 3, Web 4, Web 5, whatever you guys are talking about.
We'll get there too. Don't worry about it.
I just want to own a video game character. That's what I see this. I'm going to own a video game character that's going to be amazing for the future.
Awesome. And hopefully you get the best ones though. So looking forward to see what you got like after the drop.
Yeah. We'll have you guys back on. Thank you, Chase. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
This is a great conversation. We'll have you back on again. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye, everyone.